Welcome to West of Tulsa. I'm C.J. Ward, and we are broadcasting from our Studio 3 in Ventura, California. I'm going to introduce the entire team to you here. We're going to tell you what West of Tulsa is here in a second. Because we're in the middle of a museum, so we're going to give you a bit of a tour. To my left, my beautiful wife, Beth Farnsworth. She's also a former heartbroken V-dub owner.
True story.
Yeah. Very heartbroken. And she says she's along for the ride. So that sounds like fun. All right. And then next we have Gabe Shore. Shore. I said it right.
We'll work on that.
Okay. I've been practicing.
You're closer.
But it's a lot better than it was.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Executive producer and engine killer. And you can explain that. All right. Next we got Helm, art director, and wagon aficionado. Any questions about wagons? Mercedes-Benz typically, though, right?
Yes, primarily.
Primarily. Yeah. But he can tell you about wagons. And the man behind the controls, Dan Brockett, producer, and he's a closet car guy.
Closet car guy.
Car guy.
That's the description now, huh?
But although we are bringing you out, aren't we? Slowly during this process. But he is the man in charge. He's the one pushing all the buttons. And we have a special guest today. So we've been talking about West of Tulsa, what it is. She's going to join us in a minute, and she's going to give us some of the history of West of Tulsa, what it is, what it's all about, in just a few minutes. First, though, I want to go to Beth, because Beth is going to start us off on the history of West of Tulsa. The man, one of the co-founders of West of Tulsa, was your grandfather.
Richard Keller. That's right.
So talk about Richard and why he built what he built here.
Well, Richard was a car guy from the get-go, and he was an avid collector of things. I mean, and he really didn't part with anything. And I won't get deep into that, but, you know, I would call him kind of a / hoarder collector, really more of a collector. And after my grandmother died, he remarried a beautiful woman, Elaine, and Elaine and Richard together started West of Tulsa. Richard came from Oklahoma, and he came as a young man on a Harley Davidson during the Dust Bowl at a time when Okies were considered the bottom of the barrel. And he had, I think, something like $17 in his pocket, and he rode that Harley across state lines with proof that he had a job in California. Otherwise, they would not have let him come into the Golden State. He slept behind gas stations in ditches because it was the safest thing to do. And then he would fill up the next morning and he'd get back on the road. So everything that he had since I've known him, he would stamp with he was a bomber pilot also. He would stamp everything with West of Tulsa with his bomber pilot airplane on that as well. I don't care if it was a magazine, if it was a car part, if it was a poster. West of Tulsa was on everything. This was his life, coming into California, moving west of Tulsa to Ventura, and then eventually in his later years, you know, he lived to almost 105. In his later years, this really stood as a legacy, and it's still here. You've said this is the museum in Gabe and Helm. This is a museum that never was.
But it is.
And it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing about West of Tulsa and the museum, Richard always would talk about the few lucky people that had a chance to come through when Richard was alive, and he would talk about West of Tulsa, why he created this museum. And it's West of Tulsa Museum of the 20th Century is the full title of it. And what he wanted more than anything else was for kids to come through and see what man built with their hands. He was an engineer, typewriters and razors.
Right,
and here's some video of this would be the second story of the museum. But
car models, plane models, cameras.
Because his thing was man has started to lose that, what is it? Just that desire to build stuff with your hands. And that what we built in the 20th century is what led to iPhones and all this high-tech stuff. But kids wouldn't realize, you know, the iPhone they hold in their hand began with this thing that you had to crank on the wall and that kind of. He just didn't. He wanted people to have perspective in life, and I think that's what West of Tulsa was all about. When you guys came through the first time, what was your impression of it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I couldn't believe that this place existed right under my nose, and never even heard of.
Because you live in Ventura.
Yeah, I
right?
live in Ventura. My shop is literally down the street from here, and didn't know this existed. But when you walk in, it's overwhelming, but it's also like it's so well organized. You're like, wow, it's not just like a bunch of stuff everywhere. Things are organized. It was a really cool. There's sections, and you're like, wow, you have a camera section, you have a typewriter section, you have all these different sections in the museum, and you're like, why would somebody do something like this? I thought it was cool because I could appreciate all these things, but I was like, why would they do something like this? But what really struck me was the name. I was like, that is such a unique name in the middle of Ventura,
Yeah.
So that's what really struck me. I don't know. What do you think, Helm? I mean,
I had the same feeling. I mean, walking into the first room, did not know that it was segmented into other rooms and then a second floor. I was really blown away at just the items that were so well curated. And as soon as everybody kind of shared the story behind it, it just kind of hit me at a point where I was like, this is an amazing place, amazing story that needs to be shared. And even to this, now as we've been working on this project for the past couple months, I'm learning new things every day and every time that I come into this space. And it's just a beautiful story.
Yeah, you walk in, you go, okay, what is that?
Exactly.
Some people go, what is that? And, what was this used for at one point?
Yeah.
And that's the fun part, is when you see people walking through and picking something up and touching it and holding it. And that's what Richard had really wanted. And not just Richard. Richard had help in this whole process. And Elaine Keller is joining us now. And you two married back in 1995. Is that right?
A year before we did.
But we're before, yeah. And we've got a photo from the wedding, I do believe, if we can pop it up. But it was Tlaquepaque in
Oh, yes.
in Arizona.
It was a beautiful wedding.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful day. And we, family, being Richard's granddaughter, I felt so grateful that Richard and Elaine had each other in those years, because it was really just a beautiful relationship. And your love, your labor of love for West of Tulsa and this museum. Talk about that. Talk about all that it took to bring all that you collected to this one spot, Elaine.
Well, it's actually unbelievable by what we accomplished without realizing we were doing it. We knew the value of all that it represents and wanted to share it with everybody. But we could not do that because of the pandemic situation. And it was kind of heartbreaking because these were things that we had lived with all our lives and shared with a lot of others. But we wanted everybody to know about it.
And some people did come through. You guys had car groups that would come in through every now and then, right?
Oh, yes, we had lots of several car groups that would come through.
And they would marvel at his cars that he had sitting up on the racks. And
That's right.
military, too. You also had
Yes.
a military group or two come in and tour the museum.
Yes, that's true.
So where did the idea for this start? Did you two sit down one day and say, wow, we've got an incredible collection here. We've got to organize it. How did that all come about?
I don't really know how it came about except through the likes and treasures that each of us had saved during our lifetimes, and because of what it represented as much as anything. And we realized what we had was history. It was live, and representative of everything in history, not just the cars, but everything that represented the time periods. And
Yeah, the 20th,
and we wanted
the
to
20th
share
century.
that 20th
Yeah,
century,
the 20th century.
and we wanted to share that.
Elaine, what's one of the most favorite parts of this museum for you? Personally, the most valuable part for you?
Yes.
Which room would it be? Which collection would it be?
Which connection?
Collection. Which part of the museum?
Gosh, not sure.
And maybe the collection is a connection for you, being Native American.
Right.
You have an incredible collection along those lines as well.
That's true. I am half Cherokee Indian, and that means a great deal to me.
You weren't really a big car gal, though, but you became more of a car gal, didn't you? Thanks to Richard.
Yes. Yes, that gave us something to latch on to give it a purpose, a name, a reason. And oh, look.
That's a beautiful.
Love seeing the old photos.
Yeah, they're great old photos.
Now, you also had in the other thing that you had in common was flying.
Had what?
Flying. Pilots.
Oh, yes.
Aeronautical. Anything aeronautical you two shared. You as a
That's right.
pilot, and talk about your history about flying. And
Well, in which the
well, I know you were. Is it Power Squadron? What were
Boating. Boating also.
Oh, and the boating also. Yes.
yeah, in the boating, yes. I was in what we called the United States Power and Sail Squadrons. And we were praised by the state facilities for the work that we did with educating the to save lives.
Educating the public, right?
Right,
On the laws and the safety
right,
protocols, if you will,
Right.
on the water.
right, on the water.
Yeah.
And so that it was very important for us to spend the time and in educating everybody.
And I have to say, along with you and Richard both wanting to mentor and to educate the public, and again, to put this West of Tulsa Museum on display for children, for field trips, that sort of
Right.
thing, senior communities, and then again, the pandemic hit. But I love both your love of life. You jumping out of an airplane in your golden years, which was phenomenal, and Richard buying, and I know Helm and Gabe were so impressed by this, a BRZ in his late 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, really just grabbing life by the tail and just going with
Absolutely.
it. It's awesome.
Right. The skydiver said, "Welcome to my," as we were jumping out of the plane on my 70th birthday. And he said, "Welcome to my office. I come here every day."
Oh, wow.
That's funny.
And you are going to be 97
Yes.
next month.
Yes.
Would you want to jump out of a plane again?
Yes.
You would, wouldn't you?
Oh, I would.
You couldn't pay me to jump out of the plane.
She's a brave woman.
Yeah, I'm not as brave as you.
Yeah, and I would recommend everybody have that experience.
Does it give you a new perspective when you're getting right that moment you go to launch?
Right.
What goes through your head?
Oh, gosh.
And any words that you can't say here, you can say them.
Okay.
It's a podcast. It's a YouTube channel. You can say anything.
Okay. Well, it is just beyond imagination. You have to experience it. And
I guess
I just would recommend it to everybody.
Was it
Even-
I'm sorry. Was it terrifying and exhilarating at the same time?
Yes,
Both.
yes,
And you say a big, huge, fat prayer, and you just soak it up and you jump.
that's right.
or do you say the prayer when you land?
So you're thank you. Say-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And kiss
thank
the
you,
ground,
thank-
right.
Yes.
Right.
So fair to say that you've got horsepower driving you as well. Because I know Richard Beth tells a story about how when she was a little girl and Richard would pick her up and you tell the story about.
Oh, well, just being a child in the backseat of the black Corvair or the Tornado and Grandma and Richard would come down and he would start the car. And he was such a tall man and he was always wearing a suit and he would press the accelerator and he would floor it, in front of my parents' house. And he'd floor it and I would just go flying, into the back of the seat. Do you remember him driving like that? Maybe he eased up a little bit in his later years.
Not so much.
I know he did say that he stopped driving. He knew it was time to no longer renew the driver's license when he was in a parking structure. And he said a huge cement pillar jumped out at him and scraped the side of the car, the BRZ. Do you remember that? And he said,
And what he did? What?
it was a big cement pillar in a parking structure. And Richard said it jumped out at his car. It dented the car. He slammed into a pillar. Okay, I'm just going to say it. And he said, I knew I needed to stop driving after that. It was time.
Right.
And you had your Celica. You had your sporty Celica that you drove
Right.
for a long time.
Yes.
Maybe you
Yes,
didn't.
I didn't stop driving until, well, fairly late. When I reminded myself that it might be better if I stopped driving.
That's a hard decision.
Because, yes, because if I'm seeing double,
Oh,
and I did. I saw would sometimes see two of something, and said, "Well, I guess it's time."
Yeah, but in that case, you get to see two gas pedals. So you could just take both feet and
yeah.
just jam it down, right?
I don't
Really
recommend
feel out. No. All right.
Right.
I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt here. I'm thinking you guys see two gas pedals. So Richard stopped driving when he was 100.
Yeah.
Right when he hit 100, I think, is when he stopped driving.
Yes.
And it surprised all of us because
Right.
we just we know how much he loved cars and loved driving.
Right.
How long I would imagine Richard kept collecting up until maybe his passing? I would imagine
Right.
he would never stop. I would imagine.
Right.
Wow.
If it was something of interest and he had the opportunity to hang on to it and cherish it a little longer, he would do so.
He was driven by curiosity too, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was curious about everything.
Yes, and he was almost a scientist with life,
It's beautiful.
and he was magic in every way.
What do you?
I think he helped us build the studio too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think he
For sure.
was behind us helping us build this studio so we could do this.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Elaine, what do you think Richard would say to this show what we've done to the room, because this office is, our viewers don't know, this office was had a bunch of stuff in here that we had
Storage,
storage
yeah.
and we had to clear out. So it was quite the undertaking, but I'm sure I'm sure Richard knew where everything was here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but what do you think he would say about all of this? Do you think he'd be all for it?
He would be very pleased. And when something seemed to be spreading the word of the meaning of life, or the how each thing was important and why.
Yeah. And I think that's after, you sharing that beautiful story, you and Richard brought a new meaning to the word saved or saving things. People
Right.
save things to let it sit in a drawer.
Right.
But what you guys have done is save something from dying to being lost. And I think with this opportunity, meeting CJ and Beth and the family story, it's like we're taking a baton to continue that legacy and
That's-
share the story.
Yes.
And the beautiful space.
That's right.
So now when I think of saving things, it brings new meaning to it. It's not just, saving it for no meaning. I think it brings
You're
value
just-
to people. For
You're
people
just prolonging the history
exactly.
and right, sharing it where it may never have been known before.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think one of the beautiful things of the museum and watching you and Richard take people around from room to room was that there was a story for everything.
Yes.
As you're walking through, there was always a story about this item and this item, and
That's
the cars obviously had stories. His 1940 Ford Opera Coupe and how he and a buddy sat in that 40 Ford on Pearl Harbor Day and listened to the radio reports coming in all day long in that car. And that car's still sitting here in the museum, and it's still got Oklahoma mud dried underneath in the suspension. I even asked him one day, it's up on a lift, and I looked up and I said, "What is that?" And he goes, "That's Oklahoma mud." And it's all hard and crusted under there. But it's the story, and every car had a story behind it. But that's a big part of what drives us, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. And for instance, his, gosh, I can't think of the name right now, but the table that he drew on.
Oh, the drafting table.
the
right?
drafting
The
table.
drafting table.
Drafting
Draft-
one of
In his
Yeah.
office. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that was so important. And I still want to make use of it. Either if somebody needs...
I'll tell you who that somebody is. It's this guy right here.
Yeah, and I was just going to actually comment on that. That is the first room that I stepped in that really resonated with me because I'm a designer and definitely I own a drafting table.
Yes.
And so when I saw that, it really connected with me. And then
Yes.
that kind of led into the other room to see his architectural drawings, the typography. So I think maybe one stint I could maybe sit at the table and do some.
No, you're never allowed.
Oh, okay.
Never gonna happen, buddy.
There's
but-
some of his work.
Oh, yeah, see?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Like I think we'll make Helm's desk at the drafting table because he really gravitated towards that desk. I like it too. It's great. It's a cool piece because you don't see those very much anymore.
Exactly.
People do everything on the computer these days. And I'm sure
Right.
the drafting table led to obviously
Absolutely.
drafting.
Oh,
the
yeah,
Yes,
3D
and
CAD.
Richard used it from high school
Oh, wow.
all the way through college.
Exactly.
So he put it to use.
There's
Now
two.
it's-
There's two rooms, two favorite rooms. Now that I've kind of explored the museum, is that room with the drafting table, and then the second room with the cameras.
I knew you were going to.
Yeah, of course. Everybody likes.
I
the
love
camera.
photography. I shoot a lot of photos, and when I saw that collection, I was blown away.
You know, oh, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but one of the things that I feel like you can characterize a man, at least I can't say anything about women because I don't know anything about women, but about a man as his garage and what's inside of his garage. And it's really interesting. I've never met Richard, but you get to know a guy really, really well when you see the stuff that he's collected. And the part that really impressed me the most, because I've seen all kinds of collections and all kinds of relics that people have collected over the years. But what I found the most impressive was how almost every single thing that I picked up worked. Right? It's one thing to have a bunch of junk laying all over the place, but when it works, it's no longer junk because it works.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I thought that was the most impressive. And that's what I got a real keen sense of what Richard must have been like.
Yeah.
If you went through the hassle of making everything work, not just collecting it, but making sure that it's in good condition and it works. So I thought that was like one of the most things that caught me like by surprise. I was very impressed by that.
Yes.
You know, I thought that was very cool.
Yes. And each thing had a purpose.
Exactly.
That's right.
Everything that he owned had a story.
I love how he kept his father's tools.
Yes.
There was a huge collection. I don't think we have images of them, but it really incredible.
Yes.
And he kept those. I'm sure those still work too, Gabe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he would, to Gabe's point, he would go out to garage sales, flea markets. He'd find a typewriter is a good example. He'd find these old typewriters, really old typewriters, and he had a guy in town who would fix them. So the typewriters you see in that video, they all work.
Yeah.
And he has the story behind it.
125 typewriters.
Typewriters.
Wow.
Wow.
My favorite
And,
that
and
remember
each
that.
one
Which one?
had a story.
Oh wow.
I believe that.
Yeah. There's one, oh gosh, everyone had a story.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially the inspiration for us even doing this is we don't want these stories to die. You know, we want these stories to live forever and they need to be told, you know, and so we hope that this would be a platform in which people can tell their stories and we can capture them forever, you know, so they never get lost, you know. So you could say that Richard was the inspiration for all of this,
Yeah.
you know, because he started how many years ago?
Yeah. Well,
Right.
yeah, he started collecting a long time ago.
Yeah. And Elaine too. The
Yeah,
two of you
yeah,
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how you put this all together.
Yeah, in fact, if you notice in the set behind us, there's a tribute to you and one of your closest friendships.
Oh.
Any guess who that is?
What?
Behind us is a tribute to one of your closest lifelong friends. Any guess who that is?
She's
I
on
think-
a, she's
I
on a
think
poster.
I think she's over my shoulder. Is she over my shoulder?
She's,
She was for a while.
She's on the poster behind. She can't see the poster.
Oh, you can't
Lucky.
say Jane Russell?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Jane's over my shoulder. There she is. No, wrong shoulder. There we go.
Yeah, there she is. She's up near the
There
giraffe.
she is.
She's up near the giraffe. Yeah.
Oh, yes. She was absolutely wonderful. And meant a lot to me. Well, to everybody.
But your relationship with her was personal.
Yes.
Because why? Didn't you work with Jane Russell? You worked for her
Yeah.
as an assistant. And
Right.
more than an assistant. You were really kind of her right-hand gal, so to speak, right?
Right.
And her colleague.
Yeah, and who was it that said, Jane's having her Bible study today. Why don't you go up and join them?
Oh, and that was the first time you met? Mm-hmm. Oh,
Oh,
okay. And that was the beginning of a long friendship, which included, since we are car guys, a beautiful copper and gold Mercedes-Benz. Do you remember her Mercedes-Benz?
Oh, yes.
It's a beautiful car.
Yep.
We should have included that photo here. I didn't even think about it. But that car circulated and is now back here. And we know
Really?
we know the owners. Yeah.
oh, wow.
really?
Showed up one day on my computer and it turned out it's a local family that bought it. Wow. So then I called Elaine and said, "Hey, do you remember Jane Russell's Mercedes Benz, and she goes, "Absolutely, I remember that car." So that's back here.
Yeah, we should have had that photo. Dan, we should have had
I
photo.
wanted that car. I wanted that.
I know you did.
Dan, we should have had
beautiful car.
photos of Jane Russell.
Yes, we should have.
Many photos of
We,
Jane
we
Russell.
should. I'd love to have many photos of Jane.
I'm a little offended, guys, that the giraffe is cutting her head off, so all you see is her beautiful body. She's got a beautiful face too, by the way, in that shot.
Is it really?
Yes.
You can blame Helm for that.
Helm.
We're gonna readjust.
Helm has a giraffe fetish, I think.
We'll have a.
Do you know what
There's the
model?
shot.
Oh, yeah,
There's
you're
the
right.
shot.
Yeah,
There
you're
it
right.
is.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you know what model Mercedes it was? Was it a
It was like-
convertible or hardtop?
It was like a 280 SL, like a late 60s 280 SL, something
Copper.
like that.
Wow.
That sound about right?
Yeah,
It was like it was an old SL,
nice, nice.
and she had it custom painted and everything.
Really?
Yeah. So
Elaine, do you have any messages to people out there cruising through life as you are right now and the legacy that you have with all of this here in the West of Tulsa? What's your message to others who are going to see this for the first time?
Well, just keep looking for the message. There's a message in everything. A life message.
that's a good message right there.
It is a great message.
Yeah. One last question about West of Tulsa. I never thought about asking the question. I don't think you ever did either. Why did Richard have the stamps West of Tulsa? What was it about West of Tulsa? This is a question we've asked. Is what was West of Tulsa to him? Why did he stick to that name, that term? What was it? What was special about that for him? Is it just his whole life was West of Tulsa? I mean, that's the only guess I can make. But I wish I would have asked the question.
Well, growing up was very nostalgic and very important to, well, it was life, but it he realized the importance of all that he had experienced and again wanted to call that to other people's attention.
Well, he got our attention.
Right.
We love the name West of Tulsa. And it was an inspiration for all of this. We love the name West of Tulsa, and that was the inspiration for all of this.
Yes.
So he got our attention.
And the inspiration didn't stop there with just the whole idea of doing this. It even carries throughout the design of the brand. As you can see with the logo on CJ's shirt, it has the ambiance of a stamp as well. Hand done script, but you know, it has that feel of the stamp that Richard would put on everything that he collected. So we're
Right.
trying to carry that on throughout the whole story so that it
Yes.
is consistent and connects with everything.
Right.
Well,
And the way he remembered and shared everything had meaning, a specific meaning. And I guess everything that he touched had,
well,
yeah.
I think that's one of the things about the message, how everything has meaning, because not everybody might be into typewriters or even into cars or whatever, but someone is. Someone has a connection to cars. Someone has a connection to typewriters. Someone has a connection to cameras. And there is a message. There's a emotional, nostalgic, like you said, connection to these inanimate objects, and that makes it so powerful. So if you can capture that message with these objects, you have something that a lot of people can resonate with, and that's what we believe that this museum will do for a lot of people. They might not be able to come here physically, but we hope that they'll get to see at least the heart behind it and the vision that you and Richard had when you guys started this, because that's what captured us, and that's why we're here.
Right.
You know, so I feel like that we hope that we're going to carry that torch for both you and Richard for many years to come.
Yes, definitely.
Capturing life's journeys. I love it.
Yeah,
Thank you for all that you've done to make this come back to life. And you gentlemen as well, bringing this to life and keeping this going. It's awesome.
And it was appropriate we had you on show number 1 for West of Tulsa, that you would be our first guest.
Good.
You had to be the one. And you'll come back?
And I'm very pleased.
Good. And you'll come back and tell us more stories?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it too. All right. Any other questions for Elaine?
I'm not
before she-
leaving yet.
You're sticking around. Okay. All right. Thank you again for coming out here.
Well, thank you, all of you, for making this possible. It's wonderful. What we tried to do was to share history through this, and you've made it possible.
And this is what we're going to do in all the shows going forward. In some
Great.
form or fashion, we're going to be telling history, telling stories. We're going to have people come in and tell their stories. Mm-hmm. And you're the inspiration for all this, you and Richard. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you, Elaine.
Oh, thank all of you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So that's West of Tulsa show number 1. Follow us on all of our socials. Like, follow, subscribe. YouTube.
Channel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other thing we've got set up is the tip line.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, so the tip line is a little different for a lot of folks. When you start watching our shows and you think, I got a great story, or I know somebody who's got a great story, go to our website, westoftulsa.com, go to the tip line page, fill that out, send it in to us, because we're looking for great stories. We want to tell these stories. We want to preserve them. Maybe you can come join us here in studio, and you can tell the story. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you, West of Tulsa.